So thank you very much for coming. I do have a couple of slides, even though it's a live coding thing. It's about 4 slides. The title of this session is called Maintaining Node.js Open Source Package and Getting More Free Time. It's really, I'm not going to really going to give you any tips on how to maintain an open source project, but it's really more of an excuse on showing you some easy and basic things that you can do in order to do 2 things. Code quality, ensuring code quality, and also automating the tasks that either relate to code quality or to other, menial and grunt tasks like doing testing and doing deployment and releasing new versions, and how you can do that. And as you're going to see, it's quite easy. This, as I said, it's related to Node.js, and I have a dot there, which is not correct. But realistically, this thing applies to any language that you might use. And some of the tools that I'm going to show you do apply to multiple languages as well. But it is a Node.js-centric session. My name is Alexandru Badiu. In a former life, I was heavily invested in the Drupal ecosystem. Maybe you've heard of it. And I was a co-founder of the Drupal Romania organization. And these days, I lead the development team at something called the Ben Group, which is a company that you probably didn't hear about because it doesn't deal with software. We deal with product placement. We basically put Heineken in James Bond's hand in movies and things like that. We've been doing this for a long, long time. We had product placement at Seinfeld 20 years ago. If you remember the episode where George is upset because of a sweater he enlarged and the guy's working at an ice cream parlor, that was product placement for the ice cream parlor that last. And we're using lots and lots and lots of JavaScript, and this is how I came about this workflow. We're also hiring, so if you like what you see here today, come and talk to me. And if you love JavaScript, of course. First of all, does anyone want to follow along with me? Everything I'm going to do today is also on GitHub. It's also tagged for each step, so you can actually go in and see. If anyone wants to follow along with me, you're going to need 2 accounts, one on GitHub and one on npm.js. And you're going to have installed Git and Node.js. But if you don't, as I said, there's a link that I forgot to put in the presentation, but I will load it up, where most of the things that we're going to do today are already there, properly tagged. So we're going to talk about 2 things today. First of all is code quality. And code quality, first of all, is a very subjective term. And also it can have let's say, many facets. We're going to go over some of the things that you can do in order to ensure that your code, let's say, is good, at least from your point of view. Of course, if you're a bad programmer, no tool can help you, but these things can actually, bring you closer, and not only that. The other part is automating workflows, and by that I mean, first of all, automating these code quality tools so that you don't have to manually run them every time you make a change or something like that. But also automating mostly deployment in our case. And in our case, deployment means
that's with the continuous.
Well, I was saying deployment as you put his head in, so maybe deployment's scary. In our case, deployment means, since we're doing a Node.js package, it's going to mean releasing that package on npm.js, preferably automatically, but also releasing it on GitHub. And the idea is to, if you haven't figured it out by now, I really love this comic. It's, yeah, exactly, by Randall Monroe. Actually, this first slide, originally it was compiling, but nowadays deployment is the new compiling, since apparently nobody compiles anything with these new languages. So yeah, the idea is to get yourself peace of mind, I guess, in free time. And how I ended up here was that I forked an open source project at some point that nobody was maintaining anymore because I needed it. And everyone came flocking in. It was horrible. It was my first open source project that was actually successful. I wasn't able to actually do anything about it. I was overwhelmed. I finally gave it to someone else and said, do whatever you want with it. I don't have the time. But then I created a new open source project, which luckily or maybe unluckily is not as successful in terms of pull requests and things like that, but still gets downloaded a couple of hundred times a month. And when I did that, I thought about, I really don't want to get into the same issue as with the other project. I should really think about how to basically make sure that I can actually maintain this project. And I came up with a workflow which is really not the workflow that I will be describing today. It's mostly the workflow from work that we use at the company I work for. But because there we use these enterprise solutions made by Atlassian and all these enterprise tools like Bamboo and Jira and things like that, I had to basically change it to something free and that works for open source. I also stole a lot of it from the presentation on Egghead, so if you see something familiar, if you saw that, you're going to see like a lot of it in here. I changed some stuff, I added some new stuff, I removed some stuff, but really this is not anything new, and this is by no means the only way you can do things. But it's the way that I've used it, and it works so far. So as I said, we're going to be talking about code quality, and in this case, we're going to be talking about enforcing the code style, creating unit tests, and also doing code coverage, making sure that those unit tests actually cover as much as of your source code as you can. Because even if you have unit tests, if they cover like test just one thing and you have 10, then yeah, it's nice you have all your tests passing, but you're actually covering only 10% of your code. So we're going to make sure of that. And in terms of automating workflow, we're going to make sure that, one, we're going to be doing meaningful commits. We're going to be using semantic versioning for creating the versions of our packages. We're going to do this automatically, so we will not have to think about what was this. Was this a major version, a minor version, is this a patch? Everything will be done automatically for us. We're going to do automatic releases. And we're going to have continuous integration. The example I'm going to use is going to be with Travis CI, but you can really use anything you want. Oh, and that was the last line. So yes, let's get started. Does anyone want to follow so I don't set my pace? No? Cool. We might get some time back in this case. Okay. So what I'm going to do today is a very simple and really stupid Node.js package. Has anyone here used BOS?
What?
Has anyone here used BOS? Or heard about BOS? I'm so old. It was a very nice operating system. I think my internet is not working. It was a very nice operating system from the early 2000s. It ran blazingly fast, even on old computers like the 386. You can run 2 videos at the same time. It was based on Unix and had this amazing file system that even by today's file systems don't quite match it. It was the operating system that Apple wanted to buy instead of Next when Steve Jobs came back. But the deal fell through and these guys went bankrupt. And yeah, it was a very nice operating system, and it had a very nice object-oriented API and some API functions such as is computer on, which always returned true, and is computer on fire, I'm not making this up, which returned the temperature of the motherboard in case the computer was on fire. But what it also had was, it had this browser called NetPositive, and instead of showing these cryptic errors like domain not found, the internet is down, it would show these haikus, which were very, very funny. Let's see, NetPositive. I think I can things like that. The website you see lies beyond our perception, but others will. What we're going to do is we're going to create a package that's going to return various haikus from this list, random. It's very simple, as I said, and very stupid, but we need something to work with, and we don't really have lots of hours, so I can create something meaningful. So we are going to create this. So the first step would be to create package name. Let's say haiku post. And I'm going to have to create a GitHub account, a GitHub repository for this report. First of all, I'm going to clone the repository that I already have so that I can get the data and things like that. They changed this. Where is it? Repository for it. Use public repository. I'm just going to copy all this. Because this is a Node project, and I'm not sure how familiar all of you are with Node, so I might explain some things that maybe sound stupid to you, so I'm sorry. But the first thing we want to do is we want to set up a git ignore that's specific to Node, so we can ignore the Node.js directory, Node module directories, and things like that. And luckily, GitHub has a list of files like these that are specific for various languages. You can select the Node one. Is. I'm just going to copy this so that we don't accidentally commit logs and things like that. And in order to create a new package, we're going to run npm init and give some information about it. So the name, I've posted version. We're going to go with the default one. We're going to see why in a second. Description, simple, that. Turns random items. The entry point is the script that gets loaded when somebody requires this package. We're going to have a source directory, so we're going to say source index.js. The test command, we're not going to have one now. Yes, keywords, BOS, random, haiku, post. Author, license, default license is fine. Is this okay? So now we have our yes.
Can I ask a question? You added for the entry point source index.js. Wouldn't this limit your users to only the ones who use ES6 and Babel to run that? Like if you're writing ES6, if I require your...
We're going to get to that. We're not going to do that, what you're saying.
Okay.
We're going to get to that. Yes, we're going to use ES6. So, we're going to create folder called source. In it, we're going to have our index.js. We're going to do this step by step. So the first, at the beginning, we're not going to use ES6. We're going to use ES5. And we're going to need a JSON file that is in the other repository. So what do I call it? Source. I'm going to copy this to source. And as I said, this is a simple JSON with all those haikus that you've seen. It's about 38 of them. So we're going to create some very simple code. Haikus equals require haikus JSON. Going to module exports. And we're going to export multiple things. We're going to export something called property called all that will return all of our haikus. And we're going to export a function called, let's say, random, that will accept a parameter, count. And based on this number, we're going to return a random number, an array of, or just one value. So if count is undefined, we're going to return a random haiku. Else, we are going to build an array. So random haikus, this is an array. Going to return it. We have 4. We need a way to get a random value. We could use rand, but the beauty and the horror when it comes to Node is that there's all these little tiny packages that do very small things. If you use Node, you probably heard about the leftpad fiasco. That was a month ago, and how some guy just removed his 5-line package from NPM and pretty much broke like most of the major packages. We shouldn't be doing this, but we will do it. There's a package called, I think, unique random array. So npm install unique random array. I'm going to save this as a dependency. And we're going to load it. So var unique array. And I think, if I remember correctly, the way this works is we define an object and say random haiku, which is unique random array of all of these. So now when we call this function, it's going to return us a random. So we can say here we want 1, here we want to push, and let's add a safeguard. We know we have about 38, so if the user sends 1,000 as a parameter, let's not return 1,000. So we're going to say count is bigger than haikus length. Count equals length. Okay. So we can quickly test this. We can quickly test this by using the node REPL. So we can just hit node, say something like var lib equal require source.index.js. Now I can see that I have a random function and all this. I can see if I do lib all, which is a property, I get a list of all those, and I can say lib random. If I don't pass any value, it's going to return 1 haiku. If I do 3, it's going to return 3, and if I do 3,000, it's going to return 30. This is good. We have our code. But the problem is, realistically, JavaScript is not all that nice as a language. especially when you have to deal and write like lots and lots of code for big projects. And not sure if you're aware of, but there's actually a book written by, I think, Douglas Bradford called JavaScript, The Good Parts. The fact that there's a book called JavaScript, The Good Parts is a sign that JavaScript is not all that great. And, you know, people know that, and they've been working on new standards, improving the language. But unfortunately, the time it takes for browsers or the Node to actually implement those standards is quite high. The new standard that's going to be, let's say, closest to actually getting in the browser is called ES6. Most browsers support some version, some of the features, but there isn't a browser that supports all of them. There's also ES7 because why not? Let's create the future even if the current one hasn't been adopted. And it makes JavaScript quite nice and much better to work with. And the way we can work with ES6 nowadays is we can use something called a transpiler, which basically takes the code that we write, that's ES6 or ES7, and transpiles it to plain vanilla ES5 JavaScript. And that thing is called Babel. It's the product that now I think is owned by Facebook. So we're going to install this Babel utility. I'm going to save it as development dependency. And what we're going to do, we're going to have the source directory where we're going to write our source code. We're going to write the source code in ES6. We're not, as he was asking, we're not going to send to users the ES6 code because most of them will not be able to run it because they maybe are not using ES6. So what we'll do is our code, we'll write it in ES6, but then we'll use Babel. Every time we actually save that file, we are going to compile it to ES5, and what we're going to publish on npm or on GitHub is going to be the plain vanilla JavaScript version. So for this, we're going to have a dist directory, and we're going to go into package.json, and we have these scripts here, which basically allow us to write scripts that act on this package. So we're going to write a script called build. That's going to run Babel CLI. Run output directory to the dist, and we want it to go over the source directory. So if we do this now, we can run npm run build. Yeah, it's Babel, not CLI. So this is Babel. And what it did, you can see that created this directory and created a file here, which is identical because we haven't been writing an ES6 code. Let's. One of the things you're going to notice is that this Haiku's JSON file hasn't been copied. We obviously need that in the distribution. So we're going to add an option. I think it's called copy files. Yeah, and it does it. And we can also add, in case we end up with random crap files in this, we can add a step to run before this with pre-built and do a rm -rm disk. Run it, deletes it, creates it again, everything's nice. So now let's quickly use ES6. This really is very simple code, so there's not a lot that we can change in order to make it ES6 friendly, and I'm not going to be able to show you all the cool features that ES6 has, but we're going to need to change these imports requires to imports, because that's how it's import Haikus from, or including from. I'm going to make this a let. This I'm going to make an arrow function. Turn. This is going to be a let. Let, and that's about it. So let's run this build again, and let's see what happens. You can see that the code is exactly the same. This is because the way Babel works is that by default it doesn't do anything. You have to configure it to basically tell it what exactly do you want it to do. Because all these standards, ES6, ES7, they are very, very large. So maybe you just want one feature or another. You could be crazy and configure it by hand. There's tens of options. Or you can install what they call config packages that basically configure it automatically for you. And the ones we need, I think, are Babel, Fig, Stage. I'm going to cheat, and I'm going to look in the other projects that I've done because I don't remember.
Don't you need Babel ES 2015?
Yeah, that one and another.
Preset?
Yeah, the presets. So, quickly go to mine. JSON. Yeah. There we go. Babel preset ES 2015 and Babel preset. So npm install preset and this is called stage 2. Set them as development dependency. While that's happening, we're going to configure Babel with we can add in package.json a little bit of configuration, and we can either specify it by command line parameters, or we can just add this inside once it finishes. This is going to take a while.
What does the staging refer to? I see there is stage
2. They split the features of all these standards into 4 stages based on whether they're final or not, whether they've been adopted or not. Stage 2 is, I think, stage 2 Babel. Stage 2 preset. These plugins, trading function commas, and the spread operator. And everything from stage 3. So stage 4, stage 3 contains, and so on. Stage 4 is the ones that are widely adopted. Stage 3 going over all the way to stage 1 or 0, I think, which are the highly experimental, not really working final kind of things. So, as I said, we're going to configure it by doing this. You can also create a Babel RC file and put the same thing there, or you can use write it by command line. So now, if we run build again, we should hopefully get. It's not working. Package.json wants an actual. Forgot to come up. So you can see that the version that we get doesn't have all those ES6 features. It's pretty much plain vanilla. And what we're going to do is we're going to, every time we want to release a new version, we're going to run build, and this is going to take our code, it's going to create a ES5 version of it, and everyone will make sure that everyone can actually use it. So this is all good. Now we're going to try to enforce the code style. And this really makes a lot of sense even if you're just one developer, or if you're working in a large company. You do want to have a code style. You probably already have a preferred code style. It's also great to enforce it when you're doing an open source project because you want to make sure that all your pull requests do follow it so that you don't end up with code written in 5 types of styles with curly braces on the new line, curly braces on after the condition, and things like that. What's also great in terms of JavaScript and code styles is that it can actually help you catch bugs. We're going to see that in a second. We're going to use something called ESLint. It's, I would say, the best linter for JavaScript. There's a bunch of them, really. ESLint. I'm going to save it as development dependency. And exactly like Babel, ESLint really is very, very configurable so that you can create, configure it to actually work with your preferred code stuff. Maybe you like the kerning and enriching type of curly braces. Maybe you don't. Maybe you want your variables to have at least 3 characters so you don't end up with X, Y, Z and you don't know what those are. Maybe you don't. You're hardcore like that. So because of that, ESLint is either configurable by you with all those options, or you can download a preset. And one that I've been using, and we've been using at work as well, is a preset created by the Airbnb, which is very, very close to what we were already using. So we just ended up using that. There's loads and loads of other presets out there from various companies. You can create your own. This install thing is going to kill us. We're going to run out of time. There we go. So we're going to want the Airbnb preset. I can run ESLint now if I want. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to create a new command, ESLint, and we're going to run ESLint over the source directory. npm run ESLint. And it crashes. It's telling me there's an error. This is because by default ESLint doesn't support ES6. It expects ES5 code. So we're going to have to install a preset, as I said. It's called ESLint config Airbnb. npm. And we're going to have to create an ESLint RC file to configure it. So we're going to create that file, file.eslint.rc. This is a JSON file, and we want to say it extends the Airbnb preset. Now let's try to run it again, see what happens. It starts telling me various things. Missing trailing comma at line 24. So let's fix that. Assignment to function parameter count. It really doesn't want you to modify the parameters sent by to the function. So we're going to say something like let max equals this. If it's bigger, then it's going to be haikus linked. Otherwise, it's going to be count. So this gets rid of that error. Unexpected else after return. If we're doing a return here, really, we don't need an else. So this code can go directly here. And random haiku is never assigned. Use const. So okay. This makes sure that this again is going to be constant, this again is going to be constant. Max is defined but never used. As I said, it can help you catch bugs. I forgot to actually change this here. So it's telling me you have this variable, you're not using it. Another thing that I can do is say, well, foo equals 2. It's going to bomb out and say foo is not defined. It also has a couple of things. If you by the way, almost all of the things that I'm showing you here applies if you're writing code for the browser as well. And ESLint actually has a couple of things where it helps you detect Internet Explorer specific bugs, which is really, really good. So yeah, but now if we run this, everything is fine. This is all good, but most likely, if you're like me, you're going to forget to check your code. So a good thing would be to try to force yourself when you're trying to do things like, I don't know, pushing your code in the repository to run all these things automatically. And you can do that with something called Git hooks. Git hooks are pretty much things you can say before a commit or before a push, I want you to run these command line utilities. If they fail, don't do that. If everything is okay, everything is okay. The disadvantage with Git hooks is that they're specific to the repository. You can configure them. I can configure them here locally, but when I do push and somebody else grabs my code and clones it, the Git hooks are not transferred. They're only on my machine. Luckily, as I said in Node, there's a package for everything. There's something called G-hooks, which takes care of that. And basically makes sure that if I create some hooks, some Git hooks using it, they're going to be transferred to everyone else who tries to clone my code and push something to me. So we're going to install that. We're going to configure it by updating the package JSON as well. And we're going to create a G-hooks entry. And we're going to say let's say pre-commit. Before I run a commit, I want you to run npm run ESLint. So what this is going to do is pretty much going to run the linter every time I try to do a commit, and if the code doesn't pass the linting process, it's not going to allow me to commit, which probably is going to be very, very annoying, but it can end up quite useful, to be quite useful. So let's say I do the same thing here, so that I make sure that it's going to fail. I haven't pushed in a while, so let's add all these files, git ignore, dist, package JSON and source. First commit. Not sure about you, but I'm very bad at writing commit messages. It worked. I did something wrong. Yeah, I'm going to cheat again. As I said, I don't know all of these by heart, so it's probably I configured it improperly. It's under config. Yes, so package JSON. This should come under config. We don't have config yet, so we're going to create it. Config. And we have G-hooks. Okay, so we have a commit fixed G-hooks. And it's not letting me commit until I fix that. Realistically, what you want to do is probably the way we have it configured, because for every commit is quite annoying, we have it pre-push. So now I will be able to commit, but I will not be able to push the code. Makes a bit more sense. There we go. So in order to actually be able to push this code, we are going to have to delete this. Now it's going to work. The next step that we want to do is add unit tests, and for that there's really loads and loads of tools and libraries that you can use in Node. I'm going to go with classics. I'm going to use Mocha and Chai. Mocha is the test runner that actually runs the tests, and Chai is the library that's giving us the assertions, the assertion library. So we're going to create a new file in source. We're going to call it index.test.js. We're going to use ES6 for it as well. So we're going to import expect from Chai. We're going to import our library. So let's call it lib from index, and we're going to describe the tests. So haiku positive. Inside it, we're going to describe the two functions that we have. And inside it, I'm going to run some actual tests. So, what should all do? It should return 38 haikus. So I want expect lib.all.length to equal 38. So we have a couple of tests, well, just one. To run them, we're going to create a new command here in the script. We're going to call it test. And for it, we're going to be running mocha source index.test.js. And we're going to delete this. Yes?
All is a function, right?
No, all is an object.
Is an object?
Yes.
Yeah, I asked around.
So all is haikus, and haikus is pretty much in JSON, the array from the JSON.
Okay, thank you.
So npm t, bam, unexpected result keyword. Mocha fails because we're using ES6. There's another way that you can use ES6, let's say dynamically, and it's by using a module called Babel register. So we're going to install it. And what this does, it allows you, if you require this package, afterwards you can start requiring directly ES6 code. It takes care of automatically compiling it on the fly. So if you have like this big project that's, let's say, not open source or whatever, it's not in separate projects, but it's like, you have 100 files, you really don't want to set up Babel to actually transpile it every time, and it would be a pain. So what you can use, you can use this to basically do it on the fly. And most of these JavaScript tools already know that to work with it. So in the case of Mocha, we can say compilers. For JavaScript files, we want babel.register. Another transpiler that you might be familiar with is CoffeeScript, which in my opinion is horrible, but yes. So if I wanted to use CoffeeScript, I could say compilers JS CoffeeScript. And we have a test that passes, which is great. Let's write some more tests quickly. So we have this. Let's describe the all function. It should return a haiku. So we're going to say const haiku equals lib.random, and we want this to be, we want lib all to include, so we want to make sure that what gets returned is from the proper array. Now let's also make sure that that limit that we set works. It should not return more than 38. Haikus lib random 2000, and we expect this array to have
haikus.legal.
Yeah, don't steal my haikus. Length to equal 38. Bam, we have free passing tests. And it's quite annoying to actually have to do this every time you write the code. So what you can do, Mocha has this thing called watch, which basically stays there and monitors your files, and every time you actually change something, it reruns the test. So I could say, create a new command, say test watch, where I want to say npm run test, and then send it a parameter called w, which stands for watch. And now I can say npm run test watch. It's going to run the test, and it's going to stay there. I start changing either the test or the code. I put here 39. It runs automatically. 38 runs automatically. So we have some tests going, and what we can do now to further annoy our programmers, we can actually say, you know what, don't run just the lint, also run the tests. So now, if I add this file, commit, I push, it's going to not just run ESLint, but it's also going to make sure the tests pass so that I don't... Bam! We have some problems.
It doesn't identify your test.
Yes, so this is a common problem when you have like jQuery and all these other things that are not previously defined, but they're defined in another library. You can say, when you get something like this, you can search for this, the code of the option, no undef. Most likely the first result will be the ESLint page. And here it tells you how to override that. So in our case, we can see that we can actually put a comment and say index test global, and I want describe and it to be global variables, so don't bother me with them. The alternative is to create something here called rules, and basically put here those options. But these are the two ways you can actually configure this. So if I push now, it should let me do it. Because realistically, no matter how nice the Airbnb code style is, it's probably going to have some things such as these where it doesn't really define all the things that maybe you can use. It does predefine React and things like that, but as you saw, not describe or it. And also you can start with it and then basically change just the options you care about. So rather than having to do something from scratch and configure 30, 40 options, you can start with the closest to you and then just change what does really annoy you, for example, is not good for you. Cool, we have this. The next thing we want to do is, okay, we have tests, but the question is how much of our source code do these tests cover? As I was saying at the beginning, if you only test one function and you have 10, then you're only testing 10% of your code or 5% of your code or whatever. That's not really good. So to figure this out, we're going to do code instrumentation. Basically, we're going to use a tool that will run the tests, and it will, while the tests are running, it will monitor our code. It will see exactly which line of code gets touched and not. And it's going to be able to show us that. And it's going to be able to show us statistics as well, like 80% of your lines have been covered, which is good, or maybe it's not good, depending on you. There's a couple of tools. The most famous one is Istanbul. It's not, the latest version broke working it with ES6, so we cannot use it. There's a couple of patches going on, and it's going to work. The other one, which is, in my opinion, easier and nicer than Istanbul and fully compatible, is called NYC. So we're going to install NYC. And what this does is that instead of running Mocha directly, you run NIC, and you tell NIC to actually run Mocha on your behalf. And NIC is smart enough to plug into the tests and your source code and figure out what happens. So let's see how that goes. What we want to do is we want to run another command here. We're going to call it cover. And we're going to say NYC cover. and then npm test. I think this might work. Let's see. No, it's not working. npm run cover. Oh, of course. Maybe there. npm t. No, okay, I'm gonna cheat. Where was it?
I think it needs the Mocha binary directly.
Oh yeah. No, I need to set some couple of options. Yeah, the cover option wasn't necessary. So what I do here is I tell it I want reports to generate these reports in different different formats. Again, to use Babel, we need to do the Babel register thing like we did in Mocha. So now it's going to run. You can see that it's starting to run the tests. It's starting to run Mocha. My test pass. And this gives me a summary. Well, I just have one file. And it's telling me all your statements are covered by the tests. Only 17% of your branches are. All the functions and all the lines are covered. Let's add another function just for kicks. Let's say foo. This is a function that returns a bar. Let's run this again. Now my statement went down because I add a new function and I don't have tests for it. I have 7 uncovered lines. And the cool thing is, this creates the coverage directory here, as you can see. lcov is a format that we can use to analyze, which can be used to analyze by different tools. But this also gives us a very nice HTML thing. And you can see here, I go, see all my sources, and it tells me exactly which lines were touched by the tests, which lines were not, how many times the test went through them. For example, because this line, because I've passed, I wanted to get 38, it has been called 38. This one has been called 2 times because I have 2 tests that call the random function. And it's pretty cool, and it's pretty interesting when you actually have proper source code, not just 24 lines of code like I do here. But yeah. And what I can do now is, okay, I have this. I can add another command. Let's say check cover. That's basically going to force me to have proper tests for all my source code, so that I won't be able to, for example, commit if my code coverage drops below 90% or 80% or whatever you feel comfortable with. We're using 90% in our case. We're going to use NIC, and I think it's check coverage, but I'm not sure. It's a bit different than Istanbul, so check coverage, yeah, check coverage. So, and then I can say I want statements. Let's say 100, put 100. You want 90, let's put 90. I'm gonna put 100 just to see that it failed. Statements, lines, functions, and branches. So running now npm run check cover failed. It's going to tell me that, you know, statements is 91%. It doesn't meet the global threshold. And I'm going to add this command cover and npm run check cover. And now I will not be able to push my code unless it has proper coverage. 100% is a bit too much, realistically, for everything. but you know, you could put whatever you want there. In order to fix this, I'm going to delete this function that I've created. I'm going to need to run cover again. And I'm going to be back at 100%. Oh no, branch is 75. So let's commit. Let's push. It's running over these. And it doesn't let me because my branches is 75. So I'm just going to lower that to 75 to so the branches 75. And bam, it works. Thank you. What else? We still haven't released this this package, and what we want to do is we want to use semantic versioning. Do you know what semantic versioning is? Semver? You probably do. It's basically a way of determining whether two versions are compatible, and it sets a couple of rules for you to which thing you bump when you actually update your version. If it's a patch, like a hotfix or something like that, then you get, so the way it goes is 1.2.3. We have major version, minor version, and patch. A patch is a hotfix, minor version is a new feature, and a major version is a breaking change. So that makes sure that, for example, 1.2.3 and 1.5.4 are compatible with each other, and you can safely update and it's not going to crash. While something like 2.0.0 means that because the major version changed, there's a breaking feature, so it's probably not going to work. And what would be nice to do is it would be nice to actually get this done automatically based on what we commit, rather than us having to think about what did I commit in the last 10 commits. Was it a breaking change? Was it not? So how we can do that is we are going to install globally a tool called semantic release. pm install globally semantic release CLI. And this tool is going to analyze our commits. It's going to make a decision what those commits mean, whether it's a patch, contains only patches, only major versions, minor versions, breaking changes, things like that. And it's going to bump and release this automatically for us, which is great. Of course, you probably saw the way I was writing my commits. You cannot really figure out automatically from first commit, added tests, and things like that. That doesn't really tell. So we're going to fix that as well. But before, we need to set up semantic release. So it's set up, yes. So we're going to run it in our repository. It's going to ask us, is it private? No. Now it's going to search for my GitHub user, npm.js username, I think, on
any minute. What
is your npm registry? Because you can use a private one. We're using the standard one. npm username is voidberg. npm email is andrew@controlz.ro. npm password. Now it's going to do the same thing with GitHub. Yes, it's voidberg.
It's a feature, security feature.
So it's going to ask me what type of continuous integration do I want, because this release is going to be done by continuous integration. You can do it locally, but realistically it's a bad idea. You should test it
not just locally, but in an isolated environment as well, run the tests. And it's much easier to not make a mistake when you release it from continuous deployment rather than running a command accidentally on locally and bam, releasing something. So it can configure itself for use for Travis, or you can set up some tokens, print some tokens that you need to configure if you're using something else. I've also used CodeShip, but realistically there's Circle CI, Bamboo, and all these kinds of things. I'm going to use Travis CI just because we don't have time, and setting up something else is going to be a little bit more difficult. Single Node.js version, that. And if we look now what happened, it deleted my version from this because it's going to take care of it automatically. And it created this travel YAML file, which is basically the commands that Travis, the continuous integration tool, will use in order to test this. And you can see that we have before the script, clear the cache, and after the tests have run semantic release. So we're going to put here script because by default it doesn't know what actually we want to run. And I'm just going to say npm run test. If this is successful, then Travis will go to after success and it's going to release a new version of my code. Afterward, if not, it's going to just fail. So I'm going to add this file. I need to commit. Push. And now, if we go to Travis CI, I think we should be done by now. I'm not sure if someone else is going to come in this room. But yeah, we're going to try to stay 5-10 more minutes, unless someone kicks us out. So you can see Travis already created a job for my repository automatically. It detected that I've done a push. It started running. It's going to be slow at the beginning because it installs a virtual machine and installs all my dependencies. Afterwards, it's going to not do it again. And what it's going to do, it's going to run the tests, it's going to pass the tests, and it's going to automatically release to GitHub and to NPM. As I said, my commits are pretty crap. And if we look, for example, at Angular, you can see that Angular's commits, for example, are much nicer than what I was writing. You can see that it says what type of commit it is, what it relates to, the object that it relates to, and a description. And we have lots of docs. This is a fix, docs, chore, updating the build system, things like that. There's also, we might see a feat, but feat means a new feature that releases to file.
This is all in the contributing style guide.
Yes. Wouldn't it be nice if we could do this ourselves? And turns out we can. While Travis is building, there's a tool called Commitzen. Which is maybe with an I, Commitzen. It's basically a front end to git commit. Instead of you saying git commit everything, Commitzen works with plugins, and it basically says, using that plugin, it says what is what type of commit is this? Is it a feature? Is it a breaking change? Is it a chore? And all these other options. We're going to use this Angular style. It's called the conventional guide, so we're going to install it. I think it's commit-zen conventional guide. There's one, for example, for Jira tickets where you can log your time. So it has that and all these things. Yeah, I haven't gotten the name right. npm run semantic release done. So making a T-tour. If we go to GitHub, we can see no releases. Probably takes a bit of time. And let's see if npm.js. No. Yeah, still hasn't been pushed yet. Okay, going back here. What? Changelog, not so CZ conventional changelog, and you can write your own. There's also about 5 or 6. As I said, one is for Mapbox, one is for Jira. This Angular one works pretty well with what do you call it? With GitHub. So we install it. We need to again do the config bit here, and we're going to say that which one to use. So commit-zen. Going to give it a path, and we're going to give it the path to the module. So node modules CZ conventional changelog. Is it the right name? CZ conventional changelog. Yes. So now I'm gonna also add a command commit. This is going to be I think it's git.cz that it creates. Yeah, git.cz. You can also install it globally, and you can do just git space cz, but I haven't installed it globally. So now, let's see. We have something modified, so we're going to add this to the commit. Now we're going to run npm run commit. And it's going to ask me, what is this? Well, it's a chore, because I just changed I added something to the build system. What is the scope? Build. Short imperative as added commit-zen. Provide a longer description. I don't want any breaking changes. If, for example, I would do a breaking change, I would say breaking change something, and this will bump my major version. Otherwise, chores are patches, like patches. Fix is a patch. Feat is a minor version. I could say closes number 2, and it would automatically close the GitHub issue number 2. I don't have any, so let's do a push. And this combination of commit-zen and semantic release means that you don't ever have to worry. First of all, you don't have to worry about bumping the version by yourself, but also means that your users, provided that your package actually ends up being used by people, they can upgrade in confidence that you will not break their code because you pushed the breaking change, but you just modified the patch, which happens more than you would think. This is also going to trigger a new Travis build, I think. Yeah, so it's already here, it's running. Come on. And the cool thing about Travis is also that, as opposed to, for example, other continuous integration, it's really very well and tight integrated with GitHub. if I go and submit a pull request, it's going to do all these things for the pull request, but not the semantic release, just the testing. And it's going to embed those results in the pull request. So you can actually see directly in GitHub, this pull request failed because that, or because other reason. And that is pretty cool. All the other continuous integration tools that I've used don't really have a good integration with GitHub. It does tell you whether something went wrong or not, but it doesn't show the user the actual reasons why that happened, which is kind of shitty because you don't know what's wrong with your pull request. In some cases, these tools have better integration with Jira, for example, with Bitbucket, as opposed to GitHub. Because with Bitbucket you can write code that extend Bitbucket, but with GitHub you can't. This is quite slow. Downloading, it's doing it again. Why? Anyway, we passed over time, so we should probably stop here. The other, let's say, useful thing is that you can upload your code coverage files. I didn't have time to actually show that, but it's in the repository that I was telling you about. The repository is called hike1conf, by the way. So voidberg hike1conf. You can do it on this site. Let's log in. So this is for the previous repository. It's basically the same thing that I showed you, but it's online. And you can have public repositories and private repositories. So if you have like lots of source code and a large team, it's quite useful to have this in an online place so you can actually see what your code coverage is and everyone can see it rather than running it open the browser as I showed you before. So it also gives you a little bit of history of what happened, it shows you what the code coverage was for every commit and things like that. And I think for public projects it's free. And for private projects, you get the first one for free, and then you have to pay. Yeah, it still hasn't released. I'm not sure why. This is the previous repository that I was testing with yesterday. So it released it, and you can see here that, for example, I was tagging each step, and each tag in GitHub is release. So you can see all these steps that I created, but this, not only that semantic release did this release for me, it actually went ahead and created a changelog based on my commits with relevant links, which is pretty cool. Instead of you having to actually write what the difference between these versions is. And yeah, we're 10 minutes past, and we also didn't take the break, so we're going to stop here. This gives me a chance to use my last slide. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'll be around. Feel free to shoot me up an email. On Twitter, I'm voidberg.